Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast presented by Fully Funded Life. My name is Joe Sengel. We're here to help you live your fully funded life. I'm joined again today by my podcast co-host, Megan Hibbard, joining us from North
Yep.
Carolina. Give us the weather report, Megan.
It's actually really beautiful today, sunny, but cold. We actually turned our
Oh,
fireplace on this morning. So,
woo!
I know.
That's
It
Isn't
was
that great though? Isn't it wonderful?
I feel like
The
we've hit the
fireplace.
moment where I'm like, okay, I'm ready for like fall. Like fall's
Yeah.
good. We can stay. Let's not dip into winter. Like we're getting these like nights where it's like in the 30s and I'm like, let's just stay
hmm
back here with fall. But
Yeah, I think you'll have fall for maybe a month here. It's headed towards late October. Uh, I'm excited to talk about this today. And Megan, your job is to keep people from falling asleep because today we're going to talk about data, a whole bunch of data that I at least found to be very intriguing, very informative. And maybe you can tell everybody what episode this is and what we're talking about today.
this episode we are going to talk about I'm trying to frame it without giving it away, but we're gonna be talking about financial literacy in state by
Yes.
state, but also I do think it is interesting. I know you're talking about people not falling asleep, but I think I'm not sure if we're gonna dive into, but there are like 2 quizzes that kind of also encapsulated this, where people can like test their financial literacy and their investing knowledge. And I just think it's so interesting to think like, I would be curious for our viewers also to kind of dip into this and kind of see after we talk through a lot of this data, like, where do you fall? Where do you feel like because you might go into this and being like, "I don't know anything," and then after this, you're like, "Oh, I'm up there, like, I am good," or maybe you're like, "I know it all," and then you take this quiz and you're like, "Bleh." So, I do think all this information is super interesting, and it just affects the way that Americans live and Americans operate and the way they view everything from inflation to politics to the grocery store to their mutual funds to stocks and like their savings account. Like it just encapsulates so much that it is a lot of data, but it affects the way that we do life. So that makes it
Right.
applicable to
And
everybody.
it's a survey. What we're referencing is a survey that all of our listeners can download, and we'll even link to it. It's the 6th edition of this survey. The results were released in July of this year, 2025, and they collect this data every 3 years, and every time they do so, they get, they put some money behind this thing. They survey 25,000 plus people across all 50 states and its territories. And, it's interesting. FINRA is got this investor education foundation, and they want to understand what's happening across the landscape on financial literacy. And so I thought it'd be interesting for us to share this data with our listeners. And this financial study, it has such a wonderful title. Uh, and the title of the study is Financial Capability in the United States. They don't make it some flowery thing, and I'm an engineer. I like to name it what it is. And that's what they're exploring is what is the capability of United States people to manage money? That's what we're about, isn't it? What I thought, Megan, is they said one of the survey respondents said that they have unbelievable capability because of Joe and Megan and the Monday Money Tip podcast.
Pff, that's probably
I
it.
made that up. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure.
anyhow, I would hope that out of those 25,000, that sample set, at least one would say that. We don't get to see the individual data. I didn't see it, but you can download it and look at all the data and do your own analysis. But I thought it was interesting to share the 4 components that this study shares. Now, let's think about it real quick. 25,000 plus respondents divided by 50 states and its territories. That means somewhere around 500 people per state and territory. That's the rough estimate. And it's a survey of US adults, and because they've done this now 6 times every 3 years, we have data that goes back, about 18 years. And so if the study every time focuses on 4 key components of what they term financial capability, which financial capability flows out of financial literacy. And so they talk about 4 key components. Do you wanna list those, Megan?
Yeah, I can. So the first one is making ends meet. They have planning ahead, managing financial products, and financial knowledge. Those are our
Right.
4.
So if you think about that, if we always are trying to put things in natural buckets, what makes sense, what is related to what, making ends meet matters a lot, right? Because
Yeah,
that is what forms the basis of a stable society. And then, of course, planning ahead, that's really important because it's a known phenomena that as we age, our ability to be productive in labor type settings goes down. And then, of course, managing financial products is important because, well, there's a lot of complex financial products out there when we think about annuities and mutual funds and ETFs and derivatives and all the different things that people come up with. Uh, and then financial knowledge and literacy. And one of the things that was interesting in this report is they noted that there are concerning declines in capability in recent years, especially in the making ends meet dimension.
Mm.
Does that surprise you, Megan, that over the last from one report to the next, making ends meet is harder?
No, I mean, I think if you look at the grocery store, I mean, you see that. Like, you see people struggling to even buy groceries. Like, they're not even trying to buy crazy expensive things. It's just literally food for their family, and it's gotten harder and harder each year. So I don't think that's surprising at all. I feel like that's very par for the course for
I
where we're
think our
living right
listeners
now.
understand this, and it's that simple
Mm.
word, inflation. And this
Yeah.
is why inflation, it most powerfully impacts those who can least afford it. Because if you are making and living in abundance, in fully funded living, then inflation is a nuisance. But if
Yeah.
you're barely making ends meet and then inflation happens, it immediately pitches you over to not able to make ends meet. I looked at the data and it's on page 2 of the report, and they show that age, well, that has an effect, which makes sense. Uh, some of this data really falls under the I don't think I need to do a survey to understand this. Uh, those 18 to 34, 31%, only 31% find it not at all difficult to cover their expenses. That means 69% of 18 to 34-year-olds struggle. That's
Mm.
that 7 out of 10 that we've heard
Yeah.
saying 70% of people struggle to pay their bills.
Mm.
Those aged 35 to 54, well, it's 38% find it not at all difficult, which means still 62%. So if you
Mm.
average those two, it's somewhere around 66% of people 54 and under, but are adults, struggle to make ends meet. That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you're 55 plus, 59% find it not at all difficult. But that still means people that are 55 plus, 41% of people are struggling in the
Mhm.
wealthiest country on the planet.
Mm.
That's concerning. That's why we do
Yeah.
what we do. Um, we look at the income, and of course, if you make less income, oh, you struggle to make ends meet. It's very shocking data here. And but one thing that did stand out is that education really matters. If you have high school education or less, 67% of people struggle to make ends meet. If you have some college, 60% struggle. And if you have completed at least a degree in college or more, only 42% of people struggle, but it's still 42%.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
And I mean, and I think we've seen I mean, you have an entire book called What Everyone Should Know About Money Before They Enter the Real World. But, like, a lot of these people, like, if you have high school or left or even some college, like, they're just not teaching that the whole component of finances and how to manage them and how to get rid of debt, how to not get debt, like, how to stay debt free, how to live differently. Like, that's just not something that's being taught. And so, like, it's almost like you 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 understand where that's coming from because people you're just not being taught that. Like, it's just such a it's a hard thing for sure.
It's a hard thing. And one of the things in the report shows that the concerning trends since 2021, and then they did this study in 2024, and now they're reporting it this year, is they saw a decline from 43% of respondents saying they spend less than their income, and it dropped 5 whole percentage points down to 38% saying we spend less than our income. And of course, conversely, it went from 19% of people saying they spend more than their income up to 26%. This is the highest level ever recorded in this National Financial Capability Study. And when I think about that and we think about what we teach, how do you address that? Well, it's easy to say, do a budget. But the reality is, living by the budget becomes more of a challenge as all the goods in your budget go up catastrophically. You know, the
Yeah.
fundamentals, food, gas, energy, the things that you have very little control over.
Mm.
What would you speak to those that they're saying, "Hey, that's no surprise to me. That's where I'm at. I spend more than I make, and I'm trying my best."
Yeah.
What would you say to them, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tricky spot to be in, but I also feel like trying to take a hard look at the things that you are spending and knowing that it's not forever, but can you live differently? Like, you can cut Netflix and you can cut Paramount Plus and you can cut Amazon and you can there are things in your budget that seem like a non-negotiable, but maybe they aren't. Obviously, food, you have to have. You have to have gas in your car to get to work or drop the kids at school or like that. Like, you have to pay your mortgage. You have to like, there's things you have to pay, but there's also things that for 6 months, can you cut these things and live differently so that you're not in that 26% that's spending more than they're making. But
And
it's
in
just
some
it's
areas,
hard.
Megan, we've seen an increase in people that are gardening, raising their own food,
Yeah.
to combat this. I think it's interesting, the findings of this report was saying, "What is the underlying cause of this?" And they said that 67% of people said increased food costs have forced cutbacks on other spending.
Yeah.
67%. And that 50% said increased housing costs have caused them to cut other spending.
Mhm.
And then this is something we're gonna talk about in an upcoming episode of the podcast, is that 63% of people overall said that just the mere thought of their personal finances makes them anxious. That's up from 56% in their 2021 survey.
Mhm.
So we're seeing a correlation that as inflation happens,
Yeah.
it causes anxiety across the spectrum, that people become very concerned about it. And I think that this is why, everybody famously says Bill Clinton was elected because he summarized America's feelings by saying, "It's the economy, stupid," right? That they
Mhm.
were fighting all over all these other social issues. But he was like, if people don't have the basics covered, then
Mm.
no one's feeling good about anything.
Yeah.
Crazy. I think about this importance of just being able to meet your obligations. And that's what we try to teach in Fully Funded Life is we want you to have a budget. Uh, a budget helps you in all phases of life, whether you're struggling, you're in surplus. There's there's no better way to maximize every dollar than planning every dollar. Maybe that's why Dave Ramsey named his program Every Dollar.
Every dollar.
Because you got to give every single dollar a name. And it's hard. I think it's interesting. The second section of this report, I almost called it a podcast, was moving to planning ahead. And I sit there and I think about, if 67% of people are worried about food cost, isn't it hard to think about the future when you're trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to make your money make it today? Doesn't it almost seem mythical to think about planning ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many people that are in that boat. They're just focused on today. They're focused on meeting their needs, groceries, gas, mortgage, utility, like all those things that it it doesn't even seem like the reality of retiring or the future or planning ahead is even something that is attainable. So why should I save for it because it's not attainable? I'm going to have to work my whole life because that's not the path that I'm on, and it's like, who said that's not the path you're on. Like, you can choose to live differently and make choices and, um, but yeah, I do think it's that. And then when you have debt on top of this, so you can't pay your bills, but you're also dealing with debt, then thinking about the future is even more of an unrealistic expectation in your mind because it's like, I've got this inflation I'm trying to combat, but I also have this debt I'm having to pay off where they're calling me saying I owe. I have these are things I have to pay off. Like, yeah, retirement,
Yeah.
you know.
I think it's interesting. We've had conversations within our team, about how I mean, the benefit of teaching this stuff for long term gets you this base of experience. And I've been teaching this, since 2003 really, but I started at full blast, full time in 2006. And I remember the Great Recession. Everybody was like, I need to figure out how to budget. I need to figure out how to make my money behave, and I need to get rid of debt. But around 2012, 2013, I saw that people became far less interested in that, and they're like, "Hey, teach me
Mhm.
how to invest." Yeah, 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 budget. Okay, debt's manageable. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was about 2.5 years ago, I would say for me, the middle of 2022, that all of a sudden I saw a return back to the 2007, 8, 9, 10 area, where people are like, all of a sudden, they're back to saying, I need to get my finances under control. And there's data here that shows in 2018, uh, to the question, thinking about my personal finances can make me feel anxious, 53% said that in 2018. That bumped up in 2021 to 56%. And now in 2024, it's 63%. So it just shows how what's happening in the macroeconomic world around us can have a profound effect on the individuals within it. And and that's why people are back to saying, I got to get rid of debt. I got to get my budget. I got to get
Yeah.
stuff managed well. And so I think that that was interesting to stand out to me. Uh, then they talk about how planning ahead, uh, they did do the survey on planning ahead, and they said that 46% reported having set aside enough to cover 3 months worth of expenses, but that had dropped 7 whole percentage points from 2021 from 53%. So what rung of the ladder is having at least 3 months worth of expenses saved up? Well, that's rung number 5 of the ladder.
Mm.
And it's saying that only 46% of people are there now. That's interesting to
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
And 39% of respondents say they have tried to figure out how much they need to save for retirement. Only 39% have tried to
Mm.
figure it out. Have you figured out how much you need for retirement, Megan? Do you and Jordan know your number?
It's been a while. We probably should, we should look at it again,
Yeah,
um, to figure it out. 'Cause I do I understand sometimes people's hesitation with that because you see this number and you're like, "Yikes." Like, it can feel overwhelming, especially when you don't have a plan to invest to get there,
right.
when there's no 401k or there's no simple IRA or there's no Roth, like, there's no investments at all, like, it feels like an impossible number, which is why we teach investing and
Right.
helping people with that
So
category, so
they
it's
did
not.
this survey and they said that only 57% of people have some kind of retirement account.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that that means 43% of people have no type of retirement account. So when the market goes up or it goes down, they're like, okay. They don't even hear
Yeah.
it because it does not affect them. And there's a great verse in the Bible that Jesus shared in Matthew 6:21, I believe it is, that wherever your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Mm.
And when you've got money invested in the stock market, well, your heart's connected to it. So you start paying attention. And if you have no money invested there, well, then you won't pay attention to it. The same thing, if you drive past this house every day on your way to work and it's just one of the thousands of houses you drive by, you don't even pay attention to it. But if you buy the house and now you have a renter there, suddenly you look at that house every day. And of all the houses you drive past, Your observations and detail that you know about that house are another level. Why? Because
Yeah.
you've invested in it. Your heart is there. And
Right.
I think it's interesting that one of the things I just beg and compel people to do is to start somewhere. And the beautiful thing is with Schwab allowing you to invest a minimum of $5 or Fidelity one-upping Schwab and allowing you to invest $1 and no trading fees, this opens it up for every single person with a Social Security number. You can start to invest in Fidelity through Schwab. You can invest in mutual funds, stocks. And I say, listen, you may not have a lot of financial education. We can help you with that. Go watch YouTube videos, but get started somewhere because once your heart is there, you'll pay attention to it and you'll learn about it. Um, I think it's interesting. Um, only 16% of respondents, only 16% of respondents, Megan, we're on
Mm.
page 5, or I'm not sure where we're at on the report. I've got it summarized here. I took these notes that only 16% are willing to take financial risk. 57% are invested in a retirement account, which means they don't connect the dots that money in a stock based fund, which most of them have mutual funds, I'm sure, in that they don't view that as financial risk for some reason.
Hmm.
Isn't that interesting? I would love
That
to
is
see what
interesting.
those 16% think of risk as,
Yeah.
and what the 84% who say they don't want to take financial risk, what they view risk as. Hmm.
Mm. Hmm.
Only 20% of respondents said they would be interested in receiving financial advice from AI tools. And 59% said they are not interested, which I think is very interesting.
I'm
So,
that number is gonna change, I feel
yeah,
like.
I think it's gonna change, and I think it's interesting. They did note that they said when new technologies and new things arrive, they're gonna add questions. They're gonna have certain questions they ask every time, but they're gonna ask new questions every time. So I think we'll summarize this podcast episode and maybe have a part 2 here next week. But I think covering these first 2 of making ends meet and planning ahead, uh, I would just say to every single person who say that they have financial anxiety, uh, the way that you build financial confidence, which is the opposite of anxiety, is knowing where every dollar is going and telling every dollar where to go. And but you do that with a budget and by finding a deal and obtaining education. It's very clear additional education is wildly helpful in reducing financial anxiety. And then I would say to those who are planning ahead, if you've not updated your number in a while, Megan, Jordan, maybe you should do that. And don't be fearful of the number because that contributes to anxiety, the unknown. Know the number, and that allows you to start to get education, seek wisdom and wise counsel to get there. And if you're one of the 43% who do not have some sort of retirement account, can I compel you to go to Schwab or Fidelity today and open a Roth IRA account? Just open it and buy $5 or a dollar of some stock, some mutual fund, and get your journey started to planning ahead. You will not regret it. How would you sum up what you've learned so far from this report, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting. I also feel like as someone listening to this, if there is something about your finances that you feel, um, like you don't understand, you don't get, like, dive into that topic. Like, just start there. Like, if budgeting is the thing that you're like, "I can't budget, I don't know how to do it." Well, like, start learning about budgeting. Start like, we have whole courses about budgeting, how to get started. We have one-on-one coaches that will meet with you and talk about your budget. Like, I think if there's just start somewhere, start with one topic. If it's budgeting, if it's investing, if it's debt elimination, like, whatever it is, like, you don't have to become this massive wealth of, "Oh, I know everything there is about personal finances and I'm good," but, like, let's just take one step in and one step towards understanding the topic that gives you anxiety. So whatever it is, budgeting, if you're like, "I'm not gonna budget because it makes me, like, uncomfortable and I don't wanna do it," like, okay, well, let's take a step into that and let's start budgeting. Like, if it's debt elimination, like, let's work towards that, but it doesn't have to be I feel like a lot of times we feel like it's this all or nothing. I have to know everything or I'm just not gonna get involved in that at all. But, like, just take one step in today. Like, what can that one step be, you know? So,
Yeah, and I really do encourage people. I think accountability helps a lot from
yeah.
knowledgeable, helpful people, and that's why we provide coaching as part of Fully Funded Life, because having real live coaching, well, it provides hope and encouragement, but it also provides accountability so that you make progress. So, hey, next time we're going to talk about the final two parts of this FINRA study and maybe look at some state by state differences that were observed. And so I hope you'll join us for next week's episode. Thanks for joining us this week. And hey, make this week fully funded.